I think you've summarised that very nicely, Gerry. It's well, you started with the unknown unknowns, so maybe I'll start with the known knowns. I mean, where we've been successful is answering questions. So we've got the known knowns. That's fairly straightforward in some of these in vitro models. We're not really wanting to tackle that. That's not innovative. That's not groundbreaking, and that's not re-engineering the approach we're going to take. We certainly have got a catalogue of known unknowns. We have the questions, but we can't get the answers, and this is basically what Gerry's been focusing on today. We have the questions. We know what we can't do.
Preparing indeed.
It's the desire from the call. We have a global pot of money, which is 114 million euro, if I remember the figure well. We expect that the topics will be between 5 and 20 million euro. What we want you to do is especially consider what is the kind of budget that you need to do a good job, irrespective of and fitting your approach. It's not about fitting work into a sum of money, but more about putting the price to the work that you propose.
And I guess you heard, Nico, I think somebody who was leading a tuberculosis project asking what do we do if the EFPIA partners look at the bids and they can't find a way to support. And I think it's fair to say that when we've been discussing amongst the EFPIA partners what we're prepared to commit, the real difficulty up till now is commit to do what? Until we've got a very specific focused programme of work, what are we being asked to commit to do? And currently, I think we've got 13 EFPIA members who've definitely committed to an expression of interest to want to get involved in this area, including most of the major players. Once we get down to a specific programme of work, if it looks like it's very attractive, it's not going to be a case of whether people want to do it, it's how we can manage it. So the real challenge is going to be coming up with a sensible, logical programme of work where it's clear what the EFPIA partners' contributions will be, and then we can assign what do we need to put on this in terms of FTEs, fixed in-kind costs. We add up our numbers, and that translates directly to the budget that European Commission can release to match our funding. So the real challenge would be a specific programme of work that enables us to specify what we'll put in kind.
Gerry, but I...
Basically in the preparations in the second phase.
Second phase.
Preparation, preparing the full proposal.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, I want to highlight something there. The matching funding needs to be done over the global pot. So there may be discrepancies within a single full project proposal between the in-kind contribution from EFPIA and the thing. It doesn't have to match one for one on a single project. Yeah,
absolutely.
Of course, if there's a 50% difference or 60% difference, people will ask questions about it.
Kevin, did you have something?
Yeah, again, it was for clarification on the putting together the expression of interest. So are you looking for the group to come forward with an overall concept based on the assumption that there isn't a test at the present time preclinically, and within that overall concept you'll be happy for the group to come forward with suggestions as to how industry could contribute, and that could be fine-tuned later, but you know, there is the freedom to do that and think, we all know what's out there, what data sets are out there and so on and so forth, but to put it together conceptually, but clearly we would like the fine detail as to how that will go in. Is that acceptable? Can you tell me that?
That sounds like a reasonable way forward.
Sounds like correct. Perhaps I would like to clarify something here in terms of the in-kind contribution. The in-kind, there is a difference between in the IP, the background, which could be the data that is already there. But during the project, the in-kind contribution has to happen during the project. So, for example, data or software generated before the project started would be background rather than in-kind contribution. So you have to, perhaps this helps further to clarify in terms of formulating your expectations. Correct, Matthias? I'll better check.
Yeah, so it's the work that we're actually going to do during the life phase of the project that will translate into our in-kind spend. So anything you can do to be as specific as possible at the time of putting your bid in will only help later. But it is obviously difficult to be too specific until we've got to that contractual phase.
Okay, thank you.
There's another question here in front.
Yeah, Joost van Delle from Maastricht University. I also had more a procedural question. This is not related to this project, to all 7 projects, in fact. And this is, how is the selection procedure going to take place? Because EFPIA has got very strict ideas about what the ideal project should look like. Does it mean that EFPIA is also involved in the selection procedures, or is it an independent process?
Okay, so you're asking about the selection procedure.
Yeah.
The selection procedure, at the first stage, the expressions of interest are evaluated by an expert panel. The EFPIA partners are present in the meeting to explain the needs and the objectives of the project so that the evaluators can do a better job at evaluating. They have no voting rights in that particular meeting. Although they will have, they have no voting rights in the meeting, they are not part of the final decision. And I can tell you on the second call for projects, there were projects where the first choice made by the expert panel was not the preferred choice of the EFPIA partners, and nevertheless they are playing the game and they are forming full project proposals. So. Does that address your question?
Yeah.
Good.
So we're doing what we can with the situation we have.
Yeah, I'm just one. It's one of those items that can be playing a role in the background.
Well, both Richard and I can see the value of the EFPIA partners not being the people who make the selection, because it does need to be objective, it does need to be scientifically driven. But clearly we have to have some influence and representation, and it sounds like IMI is aware of that and is working on finding the most effective way to plug the needs of EFPIA members with this scientific selection process.
It's
come up
all
with a good project
about
that works.
the panel also fully understanding the objectives of the project. That's the main.
Yeah, I can imagine all the main players might already be involved in project proposals. And then
Sorry?
all the main players in Europe might be involved in project proposals, and it can be difficult to find good independent experts.
Okay. Any other questions in the audience? There's another question over there.
Yes, I have another question. Let's assume that the consortium think that there must be a partner in the US, for example, because it does not exist in Europe such a high quality of work. Is that possible?
It is possible to have partners in the consortium that do not receive funding from the IMI. So what I tried to explain earlier on is that you can have partners in the consortium that cannot receive funding. That would be either a partner outside Europe or a partner that, for example, is not an SME, a major healthcare provider, for example. That is a non-profit. So these you are allowed to bring in those partners, but the spirit of the funding by the European Commission is to stimulate the biopharmaceutical and bio entrepreneurship in Europe, and that's why the funding is restricted to European partners or the European Union partners, or the associated countries. And there's a list of the associated countries on FP7 website.
And to subcontract, for example, work?
To subcontract, that's under. Technically, it's not allowed unless you really can show very objectively that it doesn't exist in Europe. Yeah, but it's going to be a difficult process if this happens. I can tell you. It's not encouraged. We need to be watertight for the auditors. Here we're dealing about public money from the European Union. Okay?